We'll be driving down the state, yeah. Looking around for the next crowd, yeah. Going our own way, trying to find a new route, yeah. We'll be going in circles, trying to find a way, searching for the things we do, yeah. Drop top without a choice, yeah. Hair blown round to the window, singing stupid noise with you. I just wanna get to know ya. I wanna go far to the coast, yeah. I wanna drive fast to the ocean. I wanna know all of you. Growing old like a ghost, yeah. I wanna have kids of my own, yeah. Live a life till it's over. But until we do, it's sleeping soon. Yeah, I'm feeling a little crazy. Sat at home being lazy. Wanna travel till I'm 80, flying with you. Wanna take on the world and do something. Would you by my side like it's nothing? Wanna buy you things that you wanted. Wanna find you, drop top without a choice, yeah. Hair blow round to the window, singing stupid noise with you. I just wanna get to know ya.
I hope everyone watched the video and saw that Berserker Venom Gyre is actually pretty viable, actually. So, as I was saying yesterday, I was trying to figure out how to league start this character and eventually transition to Venom Gyre, mainly because I wanted to try out something different and play through the game as something that I really enjoy, which is a spectral throw-like skill. So, what I decided on was Berserker Venom Gyre. Now, this character, I did have to do something different. It is no longer going to be Trinity, and it's going to be Strafe stacking. And this character was really, really strong. And as you saw, I was able to get 7 rewards on Simulacrum. And the Maze of the Minotaur boss pretty much just evaporated. And I also discovered that Headhunter skills is built extremely, extremely well. Probably one of the best Headhunter builds I've ever played because of the way it interacts with more projectiles. Now, we might be wondering why Berserker, right? Why are we playing this Marauder Berserker class again? So, number one reason, I do not want to league start as Scion. I started looking at the POBs a little bit more, and I was kind of just like deluding myself, right? So, I would see the POB, and I would be like, wow, this is kind of close to Berserker if I turn off the Rage, if I take out aspect of the Carnage, and it was just like I was doing all of these things, and it was still like 30 to 40% lower damage than the Berserker, even with a smarter pathing choice. And I was like, I don't really want to league start Scion. You're pretty much gimping yourself. It's a horrible, horrible idea. I looked at Dan's Helix build a little bit more. I saw his day 4, day 5 progression, and it looked pretty bad. It was a Helix build of around like 400k Impale DPS, and I was like, this is not really going to fly. I'm pretty sure that Lightning Strike Berserker had like 2 to 3 mil damage with just a melee hit alone on like day 3, day 4. So league starting a Scion is probably also going to be very, very difficult for a lot of players. And as I was browsing my favorite forum, Reddit Path of Exile builds, I came across this post, right? So this Reddit is a little bit of special something. So I saw here that, let's see, someone posted something about any tip or secret tech to make leveling a Marauder less painful. And this guy is saying something about, as most of the YouTube videos on LS Berserker are for Kobe Black Mullet, I followed his advice for leveling and it is absolutely painful. So that just broke my heart. So if you think a Marauder leveling is painful, what are you going to think about a Scion? So I was like, no way. So this guy completely changed my outlook on life. And then I was like, how smart is this guy? And I saw that, let's see. As for utility, I wasn't using Blood Rage or Berserk, which was my second mistake. So this guy was not using Blood Rage or Berserk. He probably wasn't actually, he was biggest mistake was trying to use Trinity early on. So the nice part about this guy is he figured out all his mistakes. He didn't have enough accuracy at 88 to 90%. So this is a very self-reflective person who was actually able to figure it out. But not everyone is always so self-reflective, right? So if they league start as a Scion, it could be a huge, huge problem. And I could imagine another horrible incident. So Berserker also has the highest endgame damage potential. It is well known that any class with a lot of more multipliers will be insane. So Berserker ends up having 40% more attack speed from blitz charges, 40% more damage straight up. And then it also has Berserk, which is a 20% more move speed multiplier, 20% more attack damage multiplier. So it just ends up being insanely hard to beat. And the third point is actually one of the most important points, which is strength stacking is actually pretty strong with Marauder pathing. I was pleasantly surprised at how good the strength stacking build was with Berserker, purely because the pathing was already really good. We were already going into the Marauder area, so it wasn't a terrible, terrible thing. Like Trinity was a lot harder to make work because we had to go get point blank and other nodes that made it the Marauder really stretched out for points. So the solution is to use strength stacking for the Berserker. And lastly, the Berserk is just too good. If you ever know good builds, most good builds in the past have all been Berserk-based builds. You had Rutu's Forbidden Right, which uses cast 1 damage, take a Warlord's Mark to get Berserk up and Rage. And then you had the Chain Breaker, Cyclone builds, the Chain Breaker, Winter Orb builds. So Berserk is pretty much the hallmark and the cornerstone of every single top tier build in PoE. So that's why we use a Berserker, because we're able to maintain Berserk probably like 50 to 60% the whole time. So now let's see how much does the strength stacking Berserker actually cost, because a lot of people must be wondering, like, how expensive is strength stacking? How fast could I switch into it? Because we don't want to be playing Lightning Strike the whole time. Now, this is known as the cost of strength stacking. So let's go back to this. The cost of strength stacking, you need some mandatory unique items to get it off the ground. Now, in order to figure out these prices, I just pretty much went to POE.NINJA, and then you type in the name of the item, right? And then this gives you a chart that will tell you everything you need to know about the item. So it tells you how much it was on day 2, day 3, and what happens to the price of the item as the league goes on. So here you can see it starts off relatively cheap, or not cheap, but a lot cheaper than usual. So this is an item that goes up in price. Now this is very important because when we make this list, we want to identify which items actually go up in price and which items actually go down in price. So generally boss uniques that are very common that people start farming will go down in price, always. And you can see here, and then some uniques are just so common, like Crown of Eyes, that is always going to be really, really cheap, right? So these items will let you know how much you actually need to spend. So Lethal Pride is another item that pretty much just will go down because more and more people start doing 5 ways. And as you can see here, it starts off around like 1x or so, 1.5x, and it drops off a cliff. And then you also have Split Personality, which is probably going to be the exact same thing. As more and more people farm Simulacrum, it will go down in price. So we never want to buy these items that go down in price at the start. So this is how we actually get a good idea of how much currency we actually need to save. So I'm usually going to take the third data point, which is the third day, which is when we'll most likely be swapping over to strength stacking, depending on how much you play. So Replica Alberon's Warpath, you can't play without these boots, right? So these are the mandatory unique items. Replica Alberon's Warpath gives you 1 through 80 chaos damage for every 80 strength, and it costs around 8x, maybe 10x at the top end. But this is a pretty accurate estimate of what you'll be having to spend at the start, according to last league, right? There could be some changes depending on the rarity, but I don't think that anything will change with this item, as it is a heist unique. Now, Archnemesis is another item we'll be using, and this is how we'll replace the Eyes of the Great Wolf. Eyes of the Great Wolf is extremely expensive. We don't really know how available it will be. So we'll just use the Archnemesis. It's nice and cheap. It fixes a lot of our strength and dex issues. So it costs around 30 chaos. This is another item that goes down in price. Crown of Eyes is pretty much what we'll be using before the Warlord strength stacking helm that we'll be crafting with Maven orbs and Awakener orbs. And this costs around 3 chaos, so this price is pretty much negligible. Iron Fortress 6 Link is 6 exalts. This item, let's see here, Iron Fortress. So every time you have a question about an item, you just need to go look at how much it costs. And you see Iron Fortress 6 Link, it's an item that went down in price, probably because of Tainted Fusings. You can see it's around probably 6 exalts or so by the time, maybe 6, 7, 8 exalts, depending. It's really hard to say with items like this. So another thing about this item is that this Iron Fortress is no longer available through the Prophecy. So it might be a lot harder to get, and this price could go up a lot. We're not really sure. Megador's Vise is the gloves that we'll be using with 100 strength. Ideally, you might want to use the Socrates gems, have faster attacks for the Whirling Blades, but this is a very cheap option to get the build off the ground. And next we have Dying Sun, which is around 50C on day 3, day 2. Now Dying Sun is really important because it gives us the extra projectiles, and since we don't get any extra projectiles on Berserker, this is actually extremely important for boss damage and just clear in general. At Divergent Venom Gyre, I pretty much just put 1 Exalt here. But the thing about Divergent Venom Gyre is no one was using this gem, so I'm just pretty much assuming that maybe the guide will get popular, some people will play it, but you can see it doesn't even show up. So I'm pretty much putting 1 Exalt, but I'm pretty sure Divergent Venom Gyre is probably like a 5 Chaos Jewel last league at this time. And like day 2, day 3. So rare items, what else do we need? We need 2 rare rings with Strafe and Life. I put around 2x total, so 1x each will probably buy you pretty good rings in general. And ideally, you want another ring with probably Despair on it, but that's like a higher budget. These is just the basic rare items you need to make the build function. So now we want a heavy belt with Strafe, Life, and Resist. Maybe you could go for a Synthesis belt if you were really, really rich, but I think a Synthesis base probably costs like 2 or 3 exalts at the bare minimum. I'm not really sure how much a Synthesis rare goes for early on with percent Strafe, as I can't really find data on that. So if anyone knows, please let me know in the comments down below. But as usual, we're going for the bare necessities, right? And 1x for a rare item at league start is going to give you quite a good item. And now we want a rare claw crafted with spell damage S's. So pretty much we just want a claw with spell damage, and then we want to craft on chaos res, pen, and then we will settle with like crit chance and attack speed roll on it. So it's not exactly the hardest item to craft. You just spam spell damage essences until you get crit chance and attack speed together, and then craft on the open prefix to get Chaos Pen. So I estimated that around 1x. It might be a little bit more, a little bit less, not really sure. Or you could just buy one straight up. And then the jewels, you need 2x inertias. So inertias are the jewels we use here that converts the strength or dex into strength. So it helps out the pathing and gives us strength on the pathing. And then we need 2 large clusters with Phantom Blades only. So right here, we're pretty much just going to be using these clusters. So this is a 9 passive point cluster. And you're pretty much just going to be reforged attacks more likely until you get Phantom Blades. With pretty much anything else, you don't even need to get 2 other notables. You could just use 1 notable. And that should be generally good enough. So this costs around, I don't even know how much it would cost. These jewels are pretty cheap with 3 notables. Like back in the, so if you can see here, let's go to Path of Exile trade. So these large clusters are pretty wide variance item, which is the main problem with the build. But if you just go for 1 notable, it will be a lot cheaper. So you can see here, if we go to any, so at this point the league is pretty dead, right? So you can see here, people were selling Phantom Blades for like 80 Chaos or 1x. This is Phantom Blades Feed to Fury. It's 10 passives though. So this one's 9 passives, Phantom Blades Drive to Destruction. So you can say it's around 1x for 3 notables. But you could get it for cheaper, right? At the start, maybe. So it's hard to say. Maybe people will look out for Phantom Blades and save it. That's probably the main reason why it doesn't exist, is because everyone rolls over Phantom Blades. And next we have Lethal Pride, which is around 1x. And this is important because it gives us plus strength. And it also allows us to get a chance to deal double damage and percent strength. And Warcry buff effect. And then we need 2 split personality that gives strength on it. So that gives us around strength and dex if possible. And it comes around to 1x total. Now notice these are all pretty rough estimates, but I did try to give as accurate of an answer as I possibly could with the data available. And it comes around like 23.5 exalts or 25 exalts. And this should include pretty much everything you need to get the build off the ground. Now 23.5 exalts might seem like a lot, but it's not an insane amount to farm up at the start, right? It's not like a crazy build. In cost, it is definitely a reasonable price for a second build to transition into. So now you might be wondering, how do you exactly transition into strength stacking if you start as a Lightning Strike Berserker, and what things you should look out for. So this is exactly how you transition builds, and this is a very important concept to understand, as a lot of people wonder, how do you actually play a build that costs 20x minimum to get off the ground? So the answer is you play another build that's really strong. Now, a lot of people don't like leveling through the campaign a lot, so they de facto choose the same ascendancy and same class. Now, if you really wanted to do it the most efficient way as possible, you could potentially level a completely different class or ascendancy and play the most meta skill, farm the currency, and level up a new character. And you could probably level up a new character to maps like a Berserker in like 5 to 6 hours if you were like average at the game, right? So the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna level up Berserker or play Lightning Strike because I played it last league. It was a pretty strong build, right? It's proven to be strong and it's proven to be able to do all the end game on a little bit of a budget. Now, next we want to slowly buy gear for strength stacking after the lightning character is strong enough. So after you feel like your character is strong enough, you bought Secrets of Suffering, you have a decent claw, you got Mark of the Elder, you have a 6-link chest you want, you have a Berserk buff effect helm, and then you have a pretty good boots, you have a strike glove, so everything is in order, right? So after your character is in order, you can start buying the most important pieces. Now, the most important pieces will be the items that you think will go up in price. So I'm going to be prioritizing the boots myself because you can see here in the chart that the boots went up a lot in price as time went on. All quality Venom Gyre is another thing I'll be prioritizing because I do think that it could go up a lot in price if the build got popular. Crown of Eyes with enchant is another item I'll be prioritizing because that thing might be rare. People might not keep the enchant, and we want the Venom Gyre keeps 25% of blades. And lastly, we want clusters because clusters are always going to go up in price maybe if the build gets popular. Fan of Blades is a pretty low weighting, and it's something that you should snipe. And then lastly, after you are almost ready to transition, we want to sell off the entire Lightning Strike build on Discord. Usually people will pay a premium for the build if it has all the gear and all of the gems. And that's a pretty good way to make a little bit of extra money. And you want to buy the remaining gear. So you want to save the pieces that will go down in price and are pretty expensive. Like Iron Fortress goes down in price. It is a pretty big ticket item, so we don't want to be buying this at the start. And then you could also maybe buy Lethal Pride because it is a pretty big ticket item relative to cost. You can buy Split Personalities. You can buy Dying Sun. So you pretty much wait on buying the unique items that you know will go down in price. And after you sell off the build, you buy the remaining gear, and then you're ready to swap over to your character. Now, hopefully this has helped people understand how much exactly strength stacking costs, how you could transition into it, and the line of thinking you want to use, right? So for any build, you pretty much always want to go type in the item, and then you want to see the path the price takes. So if the item is going up in price, and there's some items like Unnatural Instinct that used to go up in price a lot, right? So if you see an item like this, you want to always be buying it, right? Because it goes up drastically in price. And the same goes towards if you're trying to farm a headhunter, right? Doctors are always very, very underpriced. You should never go to sleep with currency, right? Like if you can literally wake up and double your money on some days, right? Like look at this spike. So best way, if you're ever farming for any item for your build, you want to look at the items that will go up in price guaranteed. And for this build, it's definitely the boots, and that's the main one. But hopefully this has helped out everyone. I know the manifestos today, and hopefully we'll get some good news about this build and Nightblade in general. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more mirrors, exalts, and mage bloods than me, and see you next time. Bye.